Well, I'm not sure what's going on here with the readings in the days that I happen to be at St. Francis, but last time it was Pentecostalism and baptism by the Holy Spirit, and this time it's temptation and the devil. Thank you very much for providing a common lectionary. So, sisters and brothers, let's dive right in and talk about sin and Satan. Our quest for understanding things like Satan and sin and evil is an important one in any adult faith. But in this quest, we must resist the temptation to build a system of ideas that pretends to know more than we actually do. When we do so, we lose our grip on real, lived reality, and therefore our faith. We must never presume anything other than the fact that our knowledge of God is finite. Any theologian who purports to have an answer to every question is lying to you, especially when it comes to the monstrous presence of evil and suffering in the world. Evil is not an illusion. All theories that deny the reality of evil or minimize its power are exposed as frauds when cast against the horrors of history. You know, the most devious lie the devil has ever come up with? That he doesn't exist. Evil cannot be explained away. It confronts us with this immense reality on the pages of our newspapers every day, and theology, therefore, cannot avoid the question of how can we continue to affirm the lordship of God in Jesus Christ in the face of such horrendous sin and evil. As the question is often put, if God is both all-powerful and completely good, how can there be so much evil and suffering in the world? It's a good question, albeit troubling, especially when we witness the suffering of human beings and all of creation at the hands of nature or at the hands of other sinful human beings, creating conflict with each other and on the world they inhabit. So many, in seeking to cope with experiences of evil in the form of natural destruction, like Jesus starving in the desert, they are tempted by Satan to view our human vulnerability and mortality as evils in themselves. This is a mistake. Being finite creatures as we are, that includes the possibility of pain, of illness, of grief, of failure and incapacity, and the certainty of aging and eventually death. God has created a world of both birth and death, both order and freedom, both risk and vulnerability. In such a world, challenge, struggle, and some forms of suffering belong to the very structure of life, and that's okay. Yet, even when accepting all of that, this still doesn't help us when we are confronted by the absurd suffering that seems entirely out of proportion with any kind of good that might possibly arise from it. I'm thinking, as one example, the earthquake and tsunami that wiped the island of Banda Aceh, Indonesia, off the map and destroyed countless lives in Thailand and other countries in Southeast Asia 8 years ago. The mystery of evil is equally impenetrable when we turn from the natural to the historical. The Holocaust during World War II, perpetrated by Nazi Germany against European Jews, has become the primary symbol of radical evil in an unredeemed world. For me, just hearing the name Auschwitz makes me want to cover my ears. Think of the black slaves in the United States. Think of the victims of South African apartheid. Think of the prisoners in the Stalin concentration camps. Think of the countless number of lives lost in the Cambodian killing fields, or the victims of ethnic cleansing in the Balkans, or the millions of Rwandans slaughtered in tribal conflicts. The psalmist cries out, "How long, O Lord, how long?" And in Mark's Gospel, we hear Jesus himself say, my God, why have you forsaken me?" None of this sounds anything like good news, does it? Well, allow me to dispel a few misconceptions. Please hear me loudly and clearly. The presence of evil in this world is not divine punishment. Hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, tornadoes are not God striking down or punishing the evildoer or the sinful person. Jesus himself teaches that the blind man was not born blind on account of his own or his parents' sins. And Jesus states that it was not because of some special wickedness that the people of Siloam were killed when the tower fell on them. God does not blame victims for their own suffering. Simply put, human deeds do have consequences, and sometimes a person's recklessness or sinful behavior brings suffering in its train. I like to think of it this way. When you drop a pebble through the still surface of a pond, ripples go out. Ripples hit other things in the water, bounce off, and ripple away elsewhere, crisscrossing sometimes. The bigger the pebble, the bigger the disturbance, and the longer the reverberations last. In other words, sin has consequences. The drunk driver crashing into a busload of children is not somehow part of God's plan. God wasn't gathering his angels home. We are not automatons. Free will is powerful, and its exercise creates ripples in the fabric of life as they act and intersect with each other. That's how sin is being out of right relationship with others and with God. Sin is the seeking of our own will instead of the will of God. And in doing so, this distorts our relationship with God and with other people and with all of creation, including ourselves. You know how this feels. I know you do. You know how it feels when you and a parent or a sibling or a spouse or a child or a coworker or a neighbor are out of sync. And you know the pang of guilt that lays on your heart when you choose to pass on the other side of the street to avoid a homeless person or a panhandler. You see, we are all in relationship with each other, even if we've never met. And sin is when that relationship is damaged. In today's gospel, Jesus is tempted to walk away from God in favor of himself. This powerfully intoxicating sin is that of narcissistic self-centeredness, or pride. But I'm here to tell you today that even more pernicious than pride is the sin of not accepting that you, each one of you, is so wonderfully and gloriously made that the God who created the all of everything decided to become human to live and to suffer and to die for you, so that you would have a path, an open door from the prison of sin into the light of life. If he, who is worthy to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing, thinks that you are so worthwhile, that you are worth dying for, then shouldn't you believe it too? That is in part what Jesus was defending in his battle of wits with the devil in the wilderness. Christ would not walk away from God so that we can walk with God. Over and over and over again, the Bible directs us to God's apparent powerlessness over suffering, so that we might understand one critically important truth. Only the suffering God can help. A quintessential moment of the Holocaust is captured in a single episode from Auschwitz told by Elie Wiesel in his book, Night. On one occasion, a young boy was hanged before all the prisoners for a minor infraction of the camp rules. As his body dangled from the rope, Wiesel was asked by someone, "Where is God now?" And a voice within him replied, "Where is he? He's there, hanging on the gallows." Jesus, the Son of God, suffered and died for us, so that we know that the love of God is at work, not only where life is sustained and enhanced, but also where all that jeopardizes life and its fulfillment is resisted. We know that the love of God is at work both in the heights and in the depths of human experience, both when we are strong and when we are weak. And we know that the love of God is at work everywhere, planting seeds of hope and renewing and transforming all things. So as Paul said to the faithful in Rome from today's epistle, I say to you today, no one who believes in Jesus Christ will be put to shame, for everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Jesus faced his temptations and chose right relationship. We must do the same. But even when we fail, know that by faith we are saved.